Robin Hood of the Revolution. Our band is few but tried and true, our leader frank and bold. The British soldier trembles when Marion's name is told. Our fortress is the good greenwood, our tent the cypress tree. We know the forest round us as seamen know the sea. We know its walls of thorny vines, its glades of reedy grass, its safe and silent islands within the dark morass. William Cullen Bryant, Song of Marion's Men. The Revolutionary War saw the direction of America's future determined by the actions of brave men willing to stand against tyranny. Like Robin Hood before him, Francis Marion was loved by his men and feared by his enemies. A man of uncompromising moral strength and character, Marion fought to defend the liberty of his people against the oppression of British rulers. He used his intimate knowledge of South Carolina forests, swamps, and plains to outwit his opponents. Often called the Swamp Fox for his elusive methods and tactical brilliance, Marion was pivotal in the defeat of the British in the South. His friend Peter Horry said this of Marion: "The Washington of the South, he steadily pursued the warfare most safe for us and most fatal to our enemies. He taught us to sleep in the swamps, to feed on roots, to drink the turbid waters of the ditch, to prowl nightly round the encampments of the foe, like lions round the habitations of the shepherds who had slaughtered their cubs. Sometimes he taught us to fall upon the enemy by surprise, distracting the midnight hour with the horrors of our battle. At other times, when our forces were increased, he led us on boldly to the charge, hewing the enemy to pieces under the approving light of day." Bold and brave, crafty and compassionate, Marion was a patriot who inspired loyalty in his men and became a living legend of the American Revolution. Francis Marion was born in a South Carolina community of Huguenots who had immigrated to America due to religious persecution and were known for their gentleness and humble spirit. After an early seafaring endeavor in his teens was cut short when his ship overturned, Marion moved to Georgetown, where he spent several years gaining an education and immersing himself in his community. There, he learned many valuable skills that would later help him in his military career, such as hunting, fishing, and foraging. During the Cherokee War in 1759, Marion enlisted in a British Royal Military Unit. There, he gained knowledge of British tactics and training methods that would prove vital to his later role in the War of Independence. Not only was Marion exposed to British military strategies, but he also observed the Indian hit-and-run warfare that would become one of his trademarks. Unfortunately, the Cherokee War became known for the many atrocities committed by both parties. In a letter Marion wrote to a friend, he remarks on being ordered to burn the fields of corn that were vital to the Indians' way of life, saying that at the sight of it, he could barely refrain from tears. This experience was formative for Marion. He gained not only military skills, but also a new awareness of and distaste for the brutality of war. When the War of Independence began, Marion passionately took up arms as a patriot. By 1776, he was a lieutenant colonel of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment. During this time, Marion succeeded in one of his most famous ventures, the rescue of 150 American prisoners. These valuable prisoners were highly trained soldiers captured by General Cornwallis. Under the darkness of night, Marion surrounded an abandoned plantation where the prisoners were being kept. The British soldiers guarding the prisoners in the house were completely taken by surprise and had no way to fight back, since they had left all their guns piled outside the door. Marion came away with all 150 American soldiers, only 2 casualties, and no fatalities. Although a seemingly small victory, it boosted the morale of the colonies and moved Marion into the public eye. The hygiene, appearance, and behavior of his men mattered greatly to Marion. He insisted that each soldier look clean and neat, and made all the men shave or cut their hair short because long hairs gather much filth. Marion also abhorred the behavior allowed by other commanders, such as reckless burning. In a letter to Horatio Gates, he wrote to distance himself from such practices by saying, "I assure you, there's not one house burnt by my orders, or by any of my people. It is what I detest to distress poor women and children." Marion had much distaste for what he saw as vile practices and would not allow his men to partake in them, showing the significant role his upright character played as a military commander. Francis Marion's most famous adversary was the young and ruthless British Colonel Bannister Tarleton. Marion's guerrilla-like tactics had become a problematic nuisance for the British, so Tarleton was ordered to hunt Marion down and capture or kill him. Since he knew Marion liked surprise night attacks, Tarleton devised a trap that Marion wouldn't be able to resist. Knowing Marion was camped nearby, Tarleton lit multiple bonfires at the late General Richardson's plantation to lure Marion in and then ambush him. Tarleton would have succeeded had it not been for the general's wife sending her son to warn Marion of the trap. Marion and his men quickly rode away, only stopping once he had put many miles in a swamp between his camp and Tarleton's. The next day, Tarleton learned of Richardson's wife's betrayal and stormed off to capture Marion once again. After a 7-hour hunt, Tarleton gave up the chase and uttered the famous line, "But as for this damned old fox, the devil himself could not catch him." Marion had now earned his Swamp Fox title, inspiring patriot children to taunt British redcoats with this rhyme: "A pox on the lobsters, a pox, a pox. Beware of Marion, the old swamp fox." South Carolina saw more Revolutionary War combat than any other colony, and Marion's victories were instrumental in achieving American independence. Generations would receive the blessings of liberty he and his men fought for. Even when seemingly forgot by a Congress that never provided a promised lifetime of half pay for his service, Marion said that this would not undermine my love for my country and my principles. Before his death in 1795, an address was drafted to be read to the now nearly 62-year-old Francis Marion. Its first signer was his dear friend Peter Horry, who later provided much of Marion's biographical information. This address encouraged Marion to live his last days in peace and commended him for a lifelong character of actions ever directed by the purest patriotism. Just a few months later, the Swamp Fox breathed his last and completed the story we have today of a man driven by a kind heart, a shrewd mind, and a patriotic spirit.